So, well read. What are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about episode 6 of The Penguin Gold Summit. In this episode, the walls are closing in on the penguin, who's grown his drug fueled empire to new heights. But Sophia Giganti and the Moroni Alliance are not happy and start knocking off his henchmen one by one, putting the screws on Penguin's ambitions for Gotham City. His focus turns to his ailing mother and Vic, who must protect the family interests that he has adopted by killing his first victim.
And Matt, what comic are we pairing with this episode today?
We're pairing Penguin Pain and Prejudice #4 from DC Comics from around 2012, I believe. We're following this run still. And yeah, Pain and Prejudice #4 it's a further development of the Cassandra and Penguin relationship story. So we get an opera scene where Batman interjects and says he's not right for you, kind of moment. There's a diamond ring scene where the Penguin, almost in a strange way, as known as a rich villain, somehow he's kind of stealing from the rich to give to the poor in a interesting kind of dynamic, which is something that the TV show kind of plays with too. So, and we get that, and then there's a kind of a side quest where he makes a robotic penguin that can unleash crows, like a in some kind of like the birds kind of scenario on school children. And Batman also figures out that the penguin is probably involved with that, but he can't prove it, and the it kind of ends with the penguin kind of saying that he doesn't have the energy for that sort of thing. But maybe he does. Maybe it's because his energy is directed towards this love, but then we see that he's got his energy directed towards hundreds of these things. So he's got some sort of uh, big big plans for the city and his and retribution against the world that took his mother from him. So it's kind of interesting.
Good synopsis. So I've got a hot take. So let me drop this on you. See what you guys think. My feeling is that the Penguin isn't so much a well written show as it is a well acted show, and that it's not really the writing that's really carrying the Penguin. Is just the sheer testament to the art of acting and how people can just get you involved and invested in someone portraying someone else. And I say that because I don't think there's a single line in this show that is memorable enough for me to ever quote. You watch movies and you just go, there's just the strength of writing that makes me have to just quote this film over and over again because the something so well about how that's put together, or the plot. There's really nothing in my mind that says this plot is so intricately put together, that's some sort of puzzle or artistic testament. And there doesn't really seem to be anything in the dialogue that makes me go, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to remember that forever." So the thing that I really think is carrying the Penguin, and by gosh, it is carrying it, are the strength of these performances. So what do you guys make of that?
I think this episode in particular, there wasn't a lot that happened from a plot standpoint. So, yeah, I would say that here you didn't really have to rely on the writing as heavily as you do the performances because a lot of the moments were very intimate. This episode focused quite heavily on moments between the penguin and his mother and the relationship and the bond that they share and the very intense dynamic between the two. The mother impresses upon Penguin a lot of expectation, even asking him to do things beyond human reasonable boundaries.
Hmm.
She's suffering from cognitive decline and she doesn't want to live this way. She's always maintained a very high expectation and standard for how she believed her life should be. And she's always putting the weight of that expectation on the penguin's shoulders, and he's carried it fairly bravely throughout this series. But in this episode in particular, she asks him to end her life because she just doesn't want to live it if she's going to be in a very advanced state of dementia and um, um, unawareness throughout the remainder of her time. And the penguin, even under this duress and intense pressure, acquiesces and agrees that he will take the extra step to appease and satisfy his mother's expectations. And you can see the torment that the character experiences. He really reviles the idea of doing this insane act, killing your own mother. But because of what the mother has demanded of him throughout his entire life, he has no other choice but to surrender and satisfy, agree to satisfy her wishes at some later point.
Mm, mm. I'm thinking about HBO and prestige television, as it's come to be called. And is it known for memorable dialogue moments? You know, like
Gabagool.
5 or 6 seasons of Breaking Bad and Sopranos. There's very powerful scenes,
Mhm.
and I think they lean into those which are driven by the acting. But I think I'm agreeing with you while I'm pushing back. I don't know if that's possible. Because I don't know if that's what this era of television is trying to do. I don't think it's trying to sell us with those memorable dialogue moments, even though maybe film is still in that kind of zone, and certainly comics are strong when they have those memorable dialogue moments. I think television right now is in this space where it's meant to uh, kind of expand and let these kind of emotional moments happen, and that's where the strength comes from. I don't think they're trying to let
It's
the writers shine. I could be wrong.
it's been a while since I've seen Sopranos, but so someone who has a better memory would have to correct me. But I do recall, I could be, I recall The Sopranos having more of an intricate written plot where things fit together across the season. And this thing was in Penguin. It really just seems like people are just kind of like things happen in a sequence, and Penguin's just kind of reacting to things. It's not like, even though he's supposedly like smarter than them, he's playing them against each other, and that kind of, you can see some evidence of that. There's a lot of it where he's just kind of like he's in the moment. He's reacting to things. He kind of has a loose plan of where he wants to go, but there's several moments where he has no idea how he's going to get there, and it's only because he stumbles upon something like the caves. He kind of stumbles on remembering that those caves exist, that like, oh, hey, I could kind of use this. It wasn't like he's not he's not the master chess player where you see he's made this move since episode 1 and it's playing out in episode 7 and 8 or something like that, or 6. At least that's not the way the writing of the show comes across, and I think that Sopranos did a little better job of communicating that kind of by the way, Matt Reeves the Batman also felt this way. So I think it's in line with how that movie played out. The movie didn't seem to play out as some sort of intricate masterpiece, like Nolan, right? Where Nolan would make a film where everything really just intricately fits together like clockwork. But Nolan also had very memorable lines. There's plenty of them that come to mind. Why so serious? Like just things that are mimetic, and they've just seeped into pop culture. And I just can't think of anything in the Penguin. That being said, there is something about the Penguin that I will still remember in terms of Milioti, the one who plays Sophia, like her eye acting. Like that,
Yeah.
the how well she sells her being this wounded woman, or how well that Colin Farrell played. I remember at the beginning, as a callback to an earlier episode, I remember saying, "Hey guys, I don't know if I can sign up for this guy for 8 episodes, listening to his crazy accent that he's got that's super exaggerated." And I have to say, it somehow didn't bother me the way I thought it would. I thought after 6 hours of it, I was going to just tap out. But
Yeah.
6 hours in, he's still selling me on him being Oz, and
I,
so it's super strong.
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day, classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
I did see something that was kind of pertinent to this, and kind of a funny point to bring up. So Russell Crowe apparently binged watched The Penguin, and one of the things he
Amazing.
mentioned specifically in the little review that he gave was how poor the performance is by Vic. He said that the stutter that they teach you in acting school, he said acting is behaving, and the character did not behave the stutter. It's a very mid
neat.
performance of a
Punching down.
of a
Wow.
stuttering
Russell
Yeah.
Crowe
character.
publicly critiquing a teenager. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
I
Great.
like that though, because that's a finer. The fact that he
Sure.
had to go there is a finer critique on craft, right? He didn't just say, "Oh, it's trash." He
honesty,
pointed
yeah.
out a particular aspect of craft that can be, improved upon. And the more you,
Sure, that kid appreciates that. Yeah.
yeah, and now that he said that, I can, yeah, I think I can see that there is something kind of
Especially-
artificial about it.
Especially with such a performance-driven series, when there's a weak performance as part of the ensemble, it really stands out like a sore thumb. And I feel like that's where Vic, is the weakest element of the entire show. He had a character arc in this episode where he had to kill a local hoodlum that was basically threatening
Squid.
this squid of the safety of Penguin's mother. And this character was harassing him and bullying him. He was the head drug dealer of the neighborhood and somebody who intimidated Vic from his childhood. But he stood up to him and rose to the occasion to, execute him, to make sure that Squid wouldn't go out and sell this information of where Penguin's mother was hiding out. And I didn't see a big transformation because, yeah, there's some moments there where his eyes are a little bit sunken and he looks dour. It's like, hey, what's wrong, buddy? You got a tummy ache? But immediately he switches back to the impressionable, uh, youthful, innocent rendition of the character towards the end when he's dancing with the mother. The minute that she hears the music playing again and she feels invigorated, she's not in her stupor that she's been through most of the episode.
Mhm.
And Vic is again there, the ready and sincere caretaker that he's been portraying most of this episode. So the transformation wasn't lasting from being a murderer.
I would go ahead.
Just quickly, isn't it kind of interesting? That's another feature of television, I think, where you get these emotional moments that are intense for the audience, and they're not always as intense for the characters involved, or they're not as lasting as they are for the audience. Because I think like the expanded nature of television just means that they kind of have to softly reset these characters so that their arc more slowly transitions to the point where they want the season finale to go. Whereas like a movie, like there's no fat on the bone. Every puzzle piece has to fit. There's no extras. There's no superfluous ones. You're watching incrementally, one by one, them going from A to Z. And TV shows don't often do that. They'd run out of things to film, it seems, so you get these little false starts of advancement in the character almost, even though you're impacted by it. And so you say, wow, that was a really good moment. That was a good episode. But
Are
the
you-
characters aren't necessarily farther along.
Are you talking about? I guess it might that applies to a certain type of television. I guess because
Yeah.
like there still are like one that occurs to me. It's a comedy, right? But Arrested Development is a show where they have to have it's incredibly intricate and episodes will call back and they'll weave. It is a puzzle. But
Yeah.
I spoke with one of the screenwriters for it once, and I
Mm.
asked him about it, and he ended up saying that the script for an episode like of Arrested Development was like twice as long as a show that didn't try to do that. So he mentioned how, and this is something that any of you who've watched that particular show, uh, there's a big difference between season 2 and 3 because there was a huge amount of burnout because of the amount of sheer labor that went into scripting something that intricately connected. So not to go too far off track there, but I will say that if you're going to write a show that has that level of a jigsaw puzzle to it, it's simply going to just require twice as much page count because you have to constantly connect everything together. It's going to be a
And
lot more work.
and this could be example. I just don't know. Maybe the show there might be something that's selling the show like it is a masterpiece in that sense, where everything is intentionally placed down and all the puzzle pieces are going to come together. And I'm not personally getting that impression. It seems like it's pretty well written and very well acted, but I don't know if it's the Riddler wrote the script, you know? But if
Well,
it's
Right.
giving that impression, then it's clearly not living up to that.
there's honestly a lot of convenient plot points that are
Mm.
overlooked to move things forward, like Sophia Falcone or Gigante now, I guess, going around looking for the Penguin and coming across his girlfriend, and then going through an
Yeah,
entire scene where she's
we gotta talk
threatening to
about
kill
this.
the girlfriend and decides to spare her. And then only after the girlfriend survives does she decide to betray the Penguin's location for whatever arbitrary justification she
Uh,
gave.
us chicks gotta stick together, man.
Yeah, and just like spontaneously, she makes this decision because she didn't get killed in that moment.
Yeah.
When she invited her into the room, which was like all of it didn't make any sense, but it was serving to drive the plot forward where you have this closing moment in the episode where she stands there with the crowbar about to kill the penguin's mother. So there's these emotionally impactful times in the show, and they're all carried by the performances, but how we get there is not always necessarily the most straight path.
Mhm.
Taking a crooked road, basically.
Speaking about the strength of performances, to segue back to the comic, uh, which we haven't had the chance to dive into as much depth on, but one thing that unites the two of them, which is very interesting, the climax of Gold Summit is Penguin basically uniting all of the underdog crime clans and kind of creating a new family to resist the old money of the Maronis and the Falcones who've ruled Gotham with an iron fist. And there's a moment in A Pain and Prejudice where Penguin has a very similar, he expresses very similar sentiments towards the powerful and the elite of Gotham when he gets arrested for having a stolen diamond ring on a date with Cassandra. And he basically kind of says that, um, he talks about the fact that he's being, essentially prejudiced against, while other white collar crime essentially gets to be, treated with a certain level of acceptability. And he
That
says,
was great.
yeah,
He
we're
says
both,
he might
yeah,
be no better than those, but he's certainly no worse.
Mhm.
yeah, but they treat him
But
worse.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
some of the looks, I look like one of me, right? They look like you, but I look like one of me, and for
Hmm.
that reason, I get treated with a different standard.
And
That was powerful.
it's interesting how in both iterations, the show and the comic, he identifies with the underclass very strongly.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and he fights for them in the show, trying to get the power turned back on. And in the comic, he'll target the upper class, even though he's able to throw money around lavishly and
Right.
enjoys the wealth and the prestige of the upper class. He still considers himself very much a byproduct of the underclass of society.
So
It's almost like he's living the life that poor people think rich people live like with purple Maseratis and stuff.
Mhm.
If only there was a figure in real life that could remind us of this archetype.
so even though there isn't a ton, I would argue that makes Penguin an actual Penguin from the comic book perspective. That's something that has graded on me. It is interesting to see that particular thread in this comic show up in the show. So there's at least if you are following comics, you can see at least these little seeds there, and that can be helpful. Although this is not my favorite interpretation of Penguin over his history. But yeah, did you guys have any final thoughts regarding? Are you still on board with Pain and Prejudice and the Penguin show? Interested to see how both of these end.
For me, this was a very uneventful issue of Pain and Prejudice. I did like the little monologue at the beginning about how classist that society was and where Penguin felt he stood, and all of that. It was very Batman focused, and there was a lot of meditations there about how they were going to apprehend the Penguin without really moving much of the plot or Penguin's character arc forward through that. So I enjoyed visually this issue, but the payoff was not as strong in the storytelling. The storytelling was much stronger in this episode of the Penguin HBO series because we got to see the development of his relationship with his mother and the extents to which she would push him and make demands of him to serve her needs. And a lot of those needs are very selfishly motivated. It's still not clear exactly why she's so profoundly selfish and demanding of him. The father had passed away. He lost all of his brothers, and all of that is left very vague exactly what the tragic family history there is. But it's clearly a cross that he continues to bear throughout his life and throughout his actions. So strong performances there, strong character dynamics. Looking forward to seeing where all of that leads.
Yeah, and I'd echo that. I think Pain and Prejudice, the curious levity of this almost kind of precious, timid relationship that the Penguin has, pairing that with his unbridled cruelty, which remains in every one of these issues, is that's a balancing act that I think continues to make me curious about how these things play out. And also, Batman is a feature of this story, and it's helping me understand how he can engage in a story where he's not the main character. And I think that's been played out in an interesting way. It's and I think it's more than decent writing, at least, even if the art remains to the there's things I do critique about the Photoshop, the photo reference heavy content there. And then the HBO series is fun. It's just it's doing something despite itself. It wants so much for Sophia, and it has already earned so much for Sophia that you can't be because it's actually kind of dealing a little preciously with Sophia herself as a villain. And so I don't know, um, because she can only fall because of her circumstances. I don't know if they're gonna allow her to fall because of her culpability as a villain, you know? I think they're only letting her do this revenge arc. I don't know if they're gonna be able to land the plane where she can actually kill Penguin's mom, which I feel like is where by the end of this episode is what they're at least wanting us to be thinking about. I don't know if they have the guts for it. As well as the show is panning out so far, I don't think they can pull it. They're going to find some way where she high fives the mom and they go on a traveling pants sisterhood side quest, and then she dies by accident. I
Well,
think that's where it's going.
we'll have to see if they if they do a Steel Magnolias get together there. Thank you both for your thoughts.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.